Morning, everybody, and I'm ValerieMulvin from McCulloughMulvinArchitects, and we are going to be working on the residential care neighbourhood, as Derek introduced already this morning. We're working with Todd Architects on this, and can you hear?
Is that
Can everybody
speaker should be on, and then that'll pick up.
Can everybody hear me now? No?
Maybe hold it. Just hello.
This one doesn't pick up anything now? I think I just have to shout a bit louder. Okay, well, just to say we're working on this, really delightedly working in this area, because in a way...
I don't think anyone can... The acoustic here is really bad. If you don't mind, maybe try to use this. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start again. Just ValerieMulvin is my name from McCulloughMulvinArchitects. We're working with Todd Architects on this project, which is a healthcare residential care neighbourhood project, as Derek introduced already. I suppose for us the interesting thing about this is how healthcare facilities and a university really blend together the community into the heart of the university. So this is really like a link between the city and the university. And for this reason, what we've done is we're just picking out here in white the boundary of our site, and that relates back to the North Circular Road. There's been quite a number of pictures of the master plan, and there's one coming now in a second again. But just to really kind of, I suppose, to think about this as a neighbourhood rather than as a university, if you like, this is really a linking piece of the infrastructure that is being put together by both the Grange Gorman Development Agency, TU Dublin and the HSE, and that, if you like, is a kind of a really crucial linkage of people. And I suppose that, to me, is the most important thing, is that all the people in this equation are talking to each other, and something like a public art project really begins to pull the pieces together. So our site, as I said, is touching the North Circular Road here. The green lines there are the North Circular, and it links back through one of the green fingers we've been talking about so much into the area of the central quad, the library, and the west quad that Glenn was just speaking about, and then down to the playing fields. To look at the site from the air, you can see it again. There's a building at the north here which we'll be taking away. The people who are in this building currently, we have to build our building in phases so that we can make a place for them to come as part of the first phase, and that's a very, very significant part of our brief is how we're going to do that. But you can see how important it is, the linkage back to the existing buildings here and back to the clock tower. And as I said, the North Circular running across the top. We're all the buildings here are subject to the SDZ, the Strategic Development Zoning, which is part of the whole master planning of the site. And that means that things like the edge between our building and the city proper, along Grange Gorman Upper, is a very crucial one. And looking at the heights of things, people have been talking about, high numbers of stories. We're talking about something which we're trying to make quite a domestic scale, and at the same time we've quite a lot of people to fit in. So when you think of what you could also describe as a 120 bed hospital, it's not really that at all. It's more a series of households and neighbourhoods that we're trying to create. So back to the famous master plan and its green fingers. The main core of it is the playing fields at the bottom, the green heart of it, the student accommodation buildings, and then St. Brendan's Way, excuse me, followed by the academic hub, which is going right across the top of the site, and then Ivy Avenue and our building here, the RCN. So in a way, we think about this as being a bit like an onion, that you've got all of these layers, the academic layer and the healthcare layer, and then the city coming around this whole central green space in the middle. So the important things are about these gateway positions here at the top coming from the North Circular, and also here coming across from the primary care centre at Grange Gorman Upper. And as Glenn was saying, The really crucial activating thing about all of these buildings is how people are going to use them and move through them. So these routes, these green fingers and these routes across are really, really significant for all of us in terms of trying to create places where people can meet, where people can greet each other, and I suppose most crucially for a building that is housing elderly people, a place for them to feel part of a community in an active but yet perhaps a little bit of a step back sort of a way. So looking at and this was a competition which a number of us engaged in recently, and we were lucky enough to win it. The black here is our building running along that green finger. There's a future building here which nobody knows too much about yet, but at the same time this will be a very urban kind of edge. And looking at the slides at the bottom there, we're thinking of these as being streets in the city. So streets with trees, streets with vegetation, streets with front doors, windows and kind of warm facades. So those are the kinds of things that we were thinking about when we were putting together our thoughts on this competition. And the sketch that's here is an idea about how that green finger might be developed, with a series of planters which may move around a bit to shift as we develop it further, trees, windows and window boxes, and people able to engage with the street here. So this whole piece is going to be a very, very active piece of the new city which Grangegorman is going to become. The essence for us of public art is that the art is very much reinforcing what we're trying to do, and the architecture will be supporting what you're trying to do. So the key words for us are down on the left-hand side, things like the essence of what the building is about. And in this case, it's about creating a place, a memorable kind of place for people to live in. So that's the simplest building block you can come up with is the home or the house for people to live in. That sense of place being totally critical to this. And as Derek was saying, as people get older, certain bits of memories, and we'll all know this from our grandparents and parents perhaps, things slip away and other things become familiar. So trying to create memorable places is the key to this. That will involve, in a site like this, both geography and history. In other words, the geography, which is the new geography of the armature that we're creating in the master plan, the history of the site, which was St. Brendan's. It has a lot of, if you like, baggage with it, which I think over time everybody recognises that we're moving as a society to that whole sense of caring for people, which is really what people were trying to do from the Victorian period onwards. They were trying in the mores of the time to create a caring environment for people rather than just stringing them up or exporting them to Australia. So dealing with healthcare situations and settings like this, which have a troubled history and which have a lot of I suppose, things to bring along with them, we feel that history and geography can become a very positive sense for the future. At least that's our hope. And that's why I've put in the word time, because I think that's very important in the sense of how we're moving from one period of time to another through a whole generation of people who've spent a lot of their life here. So our first inhabitants in our new building will be people who've been living on this site for quite a long time. And to try and make a place for them, leaving St. Elizabeth's Court, where they've been for maybe a huge period of their lives, to make a place that's really warm, homely, welcoming for them is part of the challenge of this. So that sense of time, I think, is really important. And then I've just added these two words, embed, first of all, which is about, I suppose, our sense that the art, and I think Paul and Jenny and everybody who's involved in art and architecture, we're all very concerned that the art isn't something that comes along at the end, but that it's very much part of it. And one of the first questions was, how early can you engage? And I think the answer is very early. The sense of appropriateness, I think, is key to this as well. And appropriateness in this particular setting is important because of the sensitivities of older people, some of whom may be very much away, in their own worlds, and some of whom will be pretty active, wanting to get out and do stuff, but may be prevented because they have limited mobility or whatever. So it's a huge spectrum of people that we're that we're bringing along here and putting together into what we're calling a residential care neighbourhood. But the most important aspect of that is that we're creating what we're calling a household model. And this, if you like, is one of the building blocks of our scheme. And when you think of 120 people, you think, gosh, that sounds very institutional. So the intent that we've had all along is to try and break that down as much as we can. The sense of trying to create a series of places, most importantly, where people feel that they have their own individual room where they can retreat to, but yet a small place where they can come together. And probably the most successful version of that recently that people will have seen are things like the Maggie centres, which are for cancer care. And this slide down at the bottom right is one of those Maggie centres. Small scaled, very much based around a kitchen table where people sit, tell stories, eat together. That's their family unit, if you like. And what we're trying to do is to create something like that again. So to create a place where there's a kitchen or dining space, to create a courtyard or an outside space associated with it, and to have a sense of intermediate spaces between. So what we have here is a series of bedrooms with their own bathrooms, with a courtyard out here, and the intermediate space then is a communal space where people eat, or where they can socialise, or where they can maybe be slightly detached from what's going on. And some of these are, I hope, are clear. There's activities, dining, day room, sunroom, all of these spaces, trying to create a space where people will just be in touch with daylight. And every space that's internal has a sense of an outside space if people can't get outside. So these are some images from other care homes in other places in Europe. This is one in Austria, where you have this really generous balcony looking out over a courtyard, but the sense that you can walk out and maybe look at a window box there, or come out in a wheelchair and just do the same thing, and that you're sheltered underneath something, but that you're getting loads of light. Those are the kinds of things that have been really important to us. The sense of the bedroom spaces, the support spaces, and the living spaces, and how they all interact. And coming to the bedroom itself, that the bedroom itself has a view back over landscape or over the street, and that maybe is a window box or a seating space where somebody can actually sit. So that's kind of part of it. And the other thing is to do with the idea of making bigger and smaller courtyards where people have an active or a less active role. The idea that people's families who come and visit would be able to help them putting together work in the garden or work in some of the bigger courtyards. So we have a range of courtyards, some of which are paved like this, kind of more kind of harder landscape, some of which are softer like this or like this, and then places where people move through. And a lot of the thing about breaking down the scale for us has been to try and create two-storey units of these household modules. It's a way for us to create 12-bed units, which are actually 25-bed units in the sense that the HSE will staff them. So each 25-bed unit will feel like two 12-bed places. So 12 beds, we feel, is enough for people to begin to feel like they're in a family situation rather than in an institution. This is the beginning of what we're looking at in terms of facade treatment, and I'll talk a little bit further about materiality. But just to move to the sense of what somebody's bedroom might be like. And you've got at the entrance here a sort of a recessed threshold space, which is, we think, quite important for people to have a sense of ownership over the space before they come into their own room. And one of the features there might be what we're calling a memory box, a kind of a little place where they can put their photographs, artifacts from home, whatever. And the intention is that perhaps some pieces of furniture might come with people if they're coming from their own homes, or if they're coming from a place where they're familiar with one particular piece of furniture they really love, well, maybe that comes with them if we can find space for it. But to then move into the bedroom itself, there's a bathroom on one side, which is fully accessible, of course, with seating and showers and loo and so on, wardrobe spaces, storage, the bedroom itself. But the most important thing is this window edge. So a window seat with views out, some shelving again for your own things, and then a planter box. And that whole kind of combination of thickening the wall along that edge is what we think is really crucial to making an environment a bit like this, where somebody really can feel this is their home, they're in charge of it. And there's a number of levels here. We're really talking about a 4-storey set of buildings with a series of courtyards cut in and out. We've cut back on this edge here in terms of height because of certain of the SDZ requirements about housing that's along this side here. This is the edge of the primary care centre, and we've created a lot. This is our route through from the primary care centre, and the green finger is along this side here. So just to very quickly flick through, this is the plans of the 4 floors of the residential care neighbourhood. Our green finger is here, just to orient you. The North Circular Road is here. And at this place on Ivy Avenue, we're going to have a small retail unit, which will probably be a pharmacy. Our mental health unit is here. This is our connection across to the primary care centre here in the old laundry, which is where Fergus's piece is at the moment, that lovely piece of frieze. And then this connection across between the primary care centre drop-off point and the green finger is a crucial crossing point for us. So that's a very public route, as is this whole piece down here, the green finger. And linking up this whole piece is really a gateway between the North Circular Road and the city community, this healthcare community, and the community of students who will be, you know, running up and down this as 20,000 students, I think, are going to be here from about 2020. You can see the red is the access points, and we have a certain number of different activities going on, but our main therapy and centre starts here, so we have some public engagement. I'll just quickly run you through how we're doing this, but the grey in general are our bedrooms. You can see there's the kind of greeny colour are courtyards. Some of these courtyards are at first floor or second floor level, and the whole thing together is kind of like a patchwork quilt of trying to make a series of spaces which look out all the time onto green spaces. So looking first, there's the therapy centre and daycare in blue, and so the therapy centre on the ground floor off the green finger and off the connecting piece. The daycare is up on the second floor. The green then for the retail space on the ground floor, the pharmacy if you like, and the admin on the third floor. House number 1, which is the mental health place. This will be part of our first phase, and people who are currently living up here in an existing building which will be taken down will be housed first here in the same kind of household setting as the rest. Then this is one of our dementia units, and as Derek mentioned, an incredible number of us as we get older will acquire dementia. I think something horrific like 85% of us, so it's worth thinking about. That gives us all kinds of food for thought in terms of art, like wandering loops and so on. A wandering loop is a place where you can make sure that nobody who suffers from dementia actually ever comes to a dead end because they can't get out of it. So the important thing is to make a circuit all the time, and that's been very crucial to the way we've thought about how the spaces work, and to create constant flows for people to move around. That's the second house, which is linked over the first but shares a number of courtyards and links down. The third house then, which straddles right across the route between from the primary care centre, and the fourth house. So we've 4 houses plus the mental health unit, so we're really thinking we have 5 households. Sustainability is a big part of this project as well. NZEB compliant, natural ventilation, anybody can open a window safely, lots of daylight, which we've thought about in terms of how we orient the courtyards, and lots of renewables in order to achieve our NZEB, our nearly zero energy buildings. The picture here is just one from a Maggie centre at the moment, which just describes for us the essence of this. People gathered around a table. This is part of an early model where you can see these little square pieces here are courtyards down. So the whole thing is peppered with holes that gives you the sense of courtyards. As I said, courtyards of various different characters. The materials here that we're thinking about, pale brick at the moment, but with deeply recessed windows to create the idea of these window boxes where people can actually have a sense of a seat and a place of their own to look out over an activity which is endless loads of students and the community moving up and down the green finger. I've just put in a couple of things, public art projects that we've either known about or worked with in the past. Some of them I think is, and not to be in the least directive, but just things that I think still work really well, like the People's Island that Rachel Joint did, where the footprints were embedded in the pavement down at O'Connell Bridge, or the Richard Serra project, which is sorry if I just slipped down, oops, that's in the Guinness Hop Store. And these, another project which in Belgium, a Belgian artist, Benoit van Ins, created a series of tiles based on the idea of curtains, the kind of curtains that go around a bed. And he formulated a number of curtain patterns into a tile, 100 by 100 millimeters. And that tile pattern became part of a whole set of screens in the windows of this similar primary care, a care home in a place called Wingate in Belgium. And then closer at home in London, Penor and Prasad in the Moorfields Eye Hospital started in close to an existing building where you have an Eric Gill, very traditional kind of sculpture piece on a building, and the way that art has changed so much to become much more responsive to the idea of what's going on. The piece there is one which mirrors the movement of light across the retina of the eye. And I suppose this is just to do with appropriateness. And then some of the things we've done ourselves. This isn't, on the left-hand side, Darrell Viner in Temple Bar Galleries. This isn't a picture of what he did for us, because unfortunately I couldn't find one. I was just saying to Jenny, this was a piece that required a little bit of maintenance in Temple Bar Gallery and Studios. It was a piece that reflected the activity of the artist inside the building on the outside. So a series of lights might go on if somebody was using a drill, or a light would flash up and down if the lift was used, or if somebody flushed a toilet, and things like that just made the building's activity very meaningful on the outside. That piece does require a bit of maintenance, and that hasn't happened, and I suppose that's why I think the GDA and those have indicated that it's important in whatever we do. It's something that doesn't require too much maintenance, because it's we should really be thinking that things don't need much at all to sustain themselves. But embedding is an important aspect, and Niamh O'Malley worked with us. And I must say, we had great fun with these art projects. We really loved working with the artists in them. And that's why I say we'd welcome engagement at a very early stage. Niamh O'Malley made a seat for us, which has this kind of amazing Art Deco kind of piece in a building in Blackrock. We did a College of Further Education. And John Kindness worked with us creating a series of zinc panels for a library at the Source in Thurles, which was all about the Heraclitean birds and how the birds and text and the idea of all of that was particularly suitable for his library piece. And I'll finish up just by saying, in terms of where we don't want to be directive about where you might put a piece of art or work with us on it, but you can see that there's ample opportunity for different scales of spaces and for different things, different thoughts about how you might put a piece together, maybe in a courtyard, maybe in a public place. And I suppose the thing is to try and make something which I suppose will mean something to the people in the building itself, as well as something which might mean something to people passing. So perhaps I'll just say over to you at that, and hope that we will work together, or that we'll work with one of you or with other people who may decide to be part of the process. But thank you very much.